Up to now, it was assumed that the maximum sea level rise in the Netherlands would be 85 centimeters by the end of the century. But additional scientific research conducted on behalf of the Commission shows that the maximum sea level rise after 2050 may be even more than we thought until now. Moreover, the soil is subsiding by 10 centimeters per century as a result of geological processes. The Commission concludes, taking into account the soil subsidence, the maximum sea level rise will be as much as 40 centimeters around 2050. 65 centimeters to 1.3 meters around the year 2100, and 2 to 4 meters around the year 2200. August 2005. A hurricane lands in the US state of Louisiana, hitting the city of New Orleans. Dikes break and the city is completely flooded. The affected area is disrupted for months and a large part even for years. More than 1,800 people are killed. The damage runs to some $27 billion. If we don't anticipate the future, if we do nothing, floods just like that one could also hit the Netherlands, causing enormous damage and suffering, and years of disruption of our society. A large river discharge and rising sea level will increase the chances of floods in the Netherlands. For example, what will happen if the sea level rises by 40 centimeters, a level that could be reached as early as the year 2050? If we do nothing about the current condition of the coastal protection, such a rise will substantially increase the risk of floods in large parts of the Netherlands. The threatened area includes the entire Randstad district, the economic heart of this country, and that will affect the rest of the Netherlands. A sea level rise of 40 to 60 centimeters increases the chances of floods in the Rotterdam area by 10 times. At a sea level rise of 50 centimeters, the newest storm surge barrier in the Netherlands, the Maasland barrier, which is meant to protect Rotterdam and the hinterland, will no longer meet the requirements. The same goes for the Oosterschelde storm surge barrier. The Commission concludes, the risk of floods increases as the sea level continues to rise. At a sea level rise by 50 centimeters, the storm surge barriers in the Nieuwe Waterweg and the Oosterschelde will no longer suffice. Each rise of 40 to 60 centimeters increases the chances of floods in the Rotterdam area tenfold. A maximum rise of 1.3 meters increases the chances of floods by over 100 times.
De zeespiegelstijging gaat volgens verwachting sneller dan we tot op heden hebben gedacht. Er is aanvullend onderzoek gedaan en die wijst dat uit. Is dat nu reden voor paniek? Nee. Het is een langzaam proces wat geleidelijk aan verloopt. Dat geeft ons de gelegenheid om ons daarbij aan te passen. Dat moeten we vooral ook doen. Niet uitstellen. Maar nu we de gelegenheid hebben om dat met goede middelen het hoofd te bieden, moeten we dat ook doen.
The Netherlands is one of Europe's drains. This country is the final destination of large rivers such as the Rhine and the Meuse. Due to climate change, the Dutch rivers will be confronted with more drainage of rain and meltwater from Europe. This in itself is already problematic. But combined with the sea level rise, the western part of the Netherlands is faced with an even bigger problem. The threat comes from two sides. The rising sea level makes it more difficult for the rivers to drain into the sea. A higher sea level will drive up the level of the rivers, so the water will rise further inland as well. The higher sea level will drive the heavier salt seawater underneath the lighter, fresh river water, especially during periods of low discharge. Large amounts of salt water will penetrate the country through the rivers. The water supply will be at risk. Intake locations will have to be moved to prevent problems. The salt water penetrating the country through the rivers and the groundwater will also threaten the supply of fresh water for industry and agriculture. This, combined with drought, could cause great damage. The Commission concludes, if no measures are taken, Periods of drought and an increased inflow of salt water through the rivers will cause problems for the intake of fresh water for the western part of the Netherlands and will cause damage to industry and agriculture. In case of heavy storms, drainage will become an even bigger problem. The storm surge barriers on the coast will be closed. And although the land may be safe from the sea, the rivers will no longer be able to discharge their water. So if the storm coincides with a large river discharge, floods threaten this country, both from the rivers and from the sea. The Commission concludes, a flood may cause many thousands of victims and massive evacuations. Long blockades of transport routes and failure of the freshwater and energy supply. Damage to the landscape, natural environment, culture and economy, running into the tens of hundreds of billions of euros. In other words, years of disruption for our society.
Een eventuele overstroming heeft grote maatschappelijke gevolgen. Dat hebben we elders in de wereld ook gezien. Maar we moeten het niet alleen benaderen vanuit die hoek. Het schept ook allerlei kansen. Kansen met water. Vandaar ook de titel. Samenwerken met water. Kansen voor de natuur, natuurontwikkeling. Kansen voor recreatie. Kansen voor nieuwe woongebieden. Wonen aan het water bijvoorbeeld, wat heel geliefd is. Dat zijn allemaal nieuwe mogelijkheden. Bovendien kunnen we die functies combineren. Veiligheid en nieuwe ontwikkelingen. En dan tenslotte, niet te vergeten, onze rol in de wereld als natie die altijd een waterbouwtraditie heeft gehad. En waarbij we altijd in de wereld bekend staan om onze wonderen die we kunnen verrichten. Dat kunnen we ook in de toekomst verder nog vormgeven. Er zijn tal van mogelijkheden.
In our delta, abounding in water, everything is related. Therefore, the Commission presents a delta program for the entire country. The first thing we need to do in the short term is to clear the backlogs in our flood protection system as soon as possible. Projects such as Room for the River, dike reinforcement and reinforcement of the coast must be implemented without delay. The Delta Commission distinguishes 5 regions: the Wadden area, the IJsselmeer area, the river area, the southwestern delta and the North Sea coast, each requiring its own individual approach. The North Sea coast will have to be protected against the rising sea level by beach nourishments. This is an established method which will work for years to come. By adding more sand than is absolutely necessary to stabilize the coastline, an extra wide coastline will be created to offer safety in the long term, as well as new land for nature, recreation, drinking water, and further development of the beach resorts. The Wadden island of Ameland is a good example of how the coast has expanded over the years. The sea has been pushed back and new nature has been created. In the southwestern delta, the safety created by the first Delta Commission must remain secured. The unique natural environment must be preserved and reinforced as much as possible. The southwestern delta is also important to the rest of the Netherlands. If the river discharge to the North Sea is blocked because of a storm surge, river water can be stored there temporarily. The Commission recommends the dikes along the Westerschelde will have to be further reinforced. With additional measures, the Oosterschelde barrier may continue to function adequately until the end of the century. After that, in the Commission's opinion, the best option is to open the Oosterschelde again so that the tidal dynamics can return. That way, a natural estuary will be created with great ecological and economic value. In the event of an open Oosterschelde, the dikes of the Zeeland Islands will be reinforced. When the river water levels are high, the Zeeland and South Holland waters will be used temporarily to store and drain off excess water to the sea. The river area is highly important because of the discharge and supply of fresh water and for inland shipping. Where the large rivers meet the sea, the tidal river areas become extra vulnerable. For this area, the Commission issues the following recommendations. Room should be made for the Rhine and its branches and the River Meuse, all combined with safe dikes. The area of the Rhine estuary should be protected by a system of floodgates to protect against floods both from the sea and from the rivers, so as to create facilities for nature and urban development in Rotterdam and its environment. The IJsselmeer area plays a crucial role in the drainage of water and the freshwater supply. It's a strategic freshwater reservoir for the northern part of the Netherlands, and in the future also for the western part, and possibly even for other countries. The Commission recommends the IJsselmeer level should rise along with that of the seawater up to 1.5 meters above the current level to enable draining off of the water into the Wadden Sea without pumping as long as possible, and to increase the existing freshwater supply. This will require adjustments to the dikes, pumping stations and harbours along the IJsselmeer, as well as the dikes along the River IJssel. The IJsselmeer will also in the future remain the most important Dutch freshwater basin. The Markermeer level can remain unchanged to prevent complex and substantial dike reinforcements along the North Holland coast. The Commission has also calculated the costs of this Delta programme and how the plans can be realised. The Commission concludes, the total costs of implementation of the Delta programme are estimated at over 100 billion euros over a period of 100 years. A Delta fund should be set up with the revenues from natural gas. A so-called Delta Director is to ensure swift decision-making processes and firm implementations. The responsibilities for working out the details and implementation of each project will rest with regionally elected officials. The Delta Fund, Director and Programme should be established in a separate Delta Act.
De commissie heeft in zijn advies een integrale, dus een totaalvisie gegeven over heel Nederland. Voor zee en voor rivieren, maar ook voor zoetwater en de kansen daarvan. Dat is heel belangrijk in ons land, waar we een voorbeeldfunctie kunnen vervullen. We hebben in ons land daar een lange traditie in. We kunnen ook voor andere landen veel betekenen. Er zijn veel delta's in de wereld die met hetzelfde probleem worstelen. De helft van de mensen ongeveer op deze wereld woont in een delta. En er is altijd nu de Nederlandse vraag, wat gaat dat nou kosten? Dat kost 0,5% van datgene wat we met elkaar per jaar verdienen. Dat kunnen we dus best betalen. Daar moeten we dat geld voor vrijmaken en de kansen en de bedreigingen die het water biedt in ons land tot ons voordeel maken.
One fundamental question is at the center of the Delta Commission's recommendations. What kind of country do we want to live in 100 to 200 years from now? How can we create the conditions that will make this country an attractive place to live, work, invest and recreate for many generations to come? As far as the Commission is concerned, we can start realizing those conditions today.